Joining us now, you can follow him on Twitter at Drew FBG Auctions. He does all kinds of stuff for football, fantasy football stuff, but he's also a practicing attorney. He's been practicing law for 20 years and has been dealing in criminal law for a solid chunk of that. He wrote a great article on footballguys.com about everything that's going on with Henry Ruggs. Now, it was done on Tuesday, and obviously a lot has happened since then. We're now recording this on a Wednesday night, so we had to bring him on for the first time. Drew, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. This is fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, next time we'll get you on with a more fun subject, we promise. This we'll bring you on, and definitely one of the darker days on kind of a dark season for the Raiders, despite doing well. So we went through all the details already on the show about all the specifics that happened. But now that we're here at 6:00 Pacific time Wednesday, what's been the biggest part of this story to you as it's still unfolding, but major things have already happened?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing for me was the details that keep leaking out, because there were some things that I saw initially that didn't make a lot of sense to me when they were talking about signs of impairment, but they didn't talk about necessarily what those signs were and what exactly we're dealing with, whether it was alcohol or drugs or what they thought those signs were. So the details that are coming out now about the blood alcohol, about how he refused the breathalyzer, but then they did a blood draw. So I'll be interested to see that full report, because there are different rules on how you can do blood draws and things like that. And I don't want to get too into the weeds with that. But I think the biggest development today is seeing those aggravating circumstances, because the law itself is pretty harsh on its own because it has mandatory minimums. And that's not something that you see with every violation of law. So there's aggravating factors on top of those mandatory minimums. That's been a big part of what I've seen today.
What are some of those aggravating factors?
Well, number one was the speed. I know we've heard about that by now, but I believe that's a surface street, right? Not a highway.
Yeah, it's a surface street.
Yeah. So he's doing over 150 miles an hour, and apparently the computer says the airbags deployed at 124. That's disgusting on a lot of levels, but yes, that's one of those things where we talk about, as criminal defense attorneys, we talk about mitigation. And oftentimes when we're dealing with a case like this, we realize that we're not going to be going to trial, but that we have to do our best to get a deal, get the charge either reduced or amended somehow. And we also have to be able to go to the judge and say, there are these factors why you should have leniency as far as the sentence goes. And there are these positive factors that I can say in my client's behalf. Those things really just fall away, and they become very insignificant when you have those aggravating factors, the high speed and the high blood alcohol content. It's also my understanding there's a loaded gun in the car. I have not been able, I haven't seen a police report that's confirmed that yet, but that's everywhere. Doesn't mean it's true, but if that's true, that's also an additional aggravating factor. And I have not researched the gun laws in Nevada as of yet. I plan on doing that, but I know that all of those things, when you're trying to make an argument to the judge, like, hey, he's never had a history of this. This is an extremely bad night for him and poor judgment, et cetera, et cetera. Those things don't hold a lot of weight when you have those aggravating factors.
That's what you were saying, Soto. We were debating, I don't think he's going to get a few years. And Soto's like, dude, with the loaded gun, they're going to throw the book at him. And I think,
I was saying, I could see around 12-ish, because it's already a class B with the DUI with fatality. Then you take the reckless driving, and you take, just the blood alcohol level, the speed he was going, and then you add another felony with the loaded gun. It doesn't look good.
No, and the gun, like I said, I have not researched the gun part of it yet. I've actually been fairly busy all day today since that news of the loaded gun broke. There are, in most jurisdictions, now I don't know this yet. I'm going to take a look at it, and I'll be tweeting about it. But in most jurisdictions, there are mandatory punishments for the gun spec as well. And a lot of times those are stacked. So, it could be a couple years on a gun spec, and then it could be a couple years on the mandatory minimum for the DUI itself. You're talking already starting out at 4 or 5 years and going up from there. So I said today, the guy's 22. I said it wouldn't be shocking to see him in prison on his 30th birthday.
Wow. So you're thinking not just charged with 10, 12 years, actually serving a decade or almost a decade or so.
Well, and the thing is, though, that's just a preliminary. Just when I'm looking at a case like this, there are a lot of things that are going to go into this case that right now that we don't have access to. Some of the things that his defense attorney will have access to and will be able to bring up and talk about. Mm-hmm. So it may not happen. And that's just an educated legal guess from my time on the job. But I will say that if these factors that have been brought up today turn out to be true, he's not looking at a minimum sentence. No judge is going to give him a minimum on this.
So he's no surprise. He's hired, one of the best attorneys around. He was the same attorney who helped Josh Jacobs with his not DUI that maybe should have been a DUI situation. Also leaving Top Golf, by the way. Let's be careful. Like, let's start drinking some water when we golf, people. This is getting out of hand. So if you're him, right, what is your job now? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to defend Henry? What's your battle plan at this point?
That's a really hard one. The first thing you got to do is get everything from the state, because the details that are leaking out, you have to understand that they're going after the most salacious details to get that into the press so everybody can devour those. So there's going to be some other factors here. I don't know why. I heard that Ruggs was combative and uncooperative at the scene. I don't know what all that's about. There's going to be a lot of information coming in this case that he's going to have to sort through. So that's the first thing you're doing, just information gathering, talking to him and seeing what our situation is. But if things are like they seem, you're already working on mitigation and saying, what can we do to get us to a charge that doesn't have a mandatory sentence? And you're talking about pretrial diversion. You're talking about treatment options. I think at this point, you're really looking at maybe, does he have a mental health issue that he was self-medicating with alcohol? Does he have an alcohol issue? Are there things that we can fall back on that say, hey, we're going to address these problems, and once we do address them, can we amend the charge? Can we suspend the prison time and do sort of a draconian probation type thing? That's where you're really and I don't want to sit here and say that he's guilty, because that is absolutely not what I'm saying. Yeah. I'm saying if these factors are true, that's the way you're headed. But if there's something they can find in the way they did the blood draw to get the blood test thrown out, that's going to be one of the first things you're going to attack as well, to see whether or not they did that correctly. I know in the state of Ohio, there has to be a qualified person that does the blood draw, and sometimes that doesn't happen, and so they can't use it. Stuff like that. Statements he may have made at the scene, you're going to see whether or not you can get those suppressed. Things like that. You're looking at the evidence and trying to attack the evidence, but if the evidence is strong, like it appears, then you're moving towards mitigation with the judge and with the prosecutor and trying to get an amendment on a charge that doesn't have a mandatory minimum.
You mentioned how the DA is trying to release stuff to the press, right? Make it as salacious as possible. How big of a factor is the press in something like this? Because you hear all the time that so many people say oh, celebrities, they get off easy. It's no, they don't. Other than obviously having money to afford great lawyers, I always thought it was the other way, where DAs are trying to make their name by slam dunking on something like this. No one that runs for office wants to look like they run an office that lets celebrities get away with killing people driving drunk.
Yeah. And the Jacobs case was interesting because there did seem to be a lot of factors that were pointing to his intoxication, but because he didn't have any prior offenses, in those situations, a lot of times you do get a break. But the situation here is vastly different. And one of the things that I put in my article, and I know that you talked about reading it, but when you involve a victim in a case, that changes the playing field completely. Yeah. So you have a family, and they've got a right to make a statement, how it's impacted their lives, to lobby the judge, and they'll be all a part of. Usually, they're going to be a part of the plea negotiations. So, as a defense attorney, I have my client. And then the DA has their client, and that's the victim's family. So that changes things a lot, and it makes it a lot harder for them to give a deal. But on top of that, it's an optics thing, and you say it exactly right. You can't be the guy who lets Henry Ruggs get away with this. So no matter how much you may say, okay, well, if he's got no history of this and no history of this kind of behavior, he would normally get a break. This is such a bad case that I'm not sure that's going to matter, and I think the DA is going to feel compelled to go hard.
So let's say Henry Ruggs is your client right now. What would you advise him to do in the short term?
First of all, shut up. Don't say a word. Number two, right away go get assessed for an alcohol problem and start alcohol treatment immediately, because he's going to bond out. He's going to be out. Yeah. So first and foremost, you cannot get in any more trouble, be seen anywhere in public. Can't be seen at a nightclub. You can't be seen doing anything other than being a choir boy. You go get some alcohol treatment, get into something, maybe go inpatient, whatever the case may be. I would get a mental health assessment, see whether or not there's a mental health issue going on, whether there was some depression that he was treating with alcohol or drugs. And all that stuff can be very persuasive to a court. Like, hey, we found the root cause of why he made these poor decisions that night. Now, sometimes it's a 22-year-old thinking they're invincible, and that could be the case. But right now, I'm advising Ruggs, be quiet, stay out of trouble, stay out of the public eye, and then start addressing these other issues that could be factors that we can go to the judge and the prosecutor and say, he's addressing these problems. He made a huge mistake, but he understands that that was rock bottom, and here's how he's addressing it.
What's this? I know it's almost an impossible question, but just your best guess. What's this going to cost Henry Ruggs financially? I mean, fines, bail, jury, a very expensive attorney, I imagine, possibly months, years, like litigation. What's your best guess?
Yeah, well, I was having this conversation with my wife on the way out of town today. It's a lot, or everything, because not only is this, I mean, yeah, I honestly believe that all of that is secondary to whatever civil suit the family is going to bring, because the attorney, yeah, he's going to charge a lot of money. I mean, this may be a $75,000 case, but for a guy like Ruggs who's making the money he is, that doesn't matter. I think really it's going to come down to what happens in the civil suit. He's going to get sued, and I really believe financially it's bleak right now for him.
Like everything, like
everything else, right?
I mean, it's only his second year in the league. You know what I mean? Yeah. He doesn't have like 20 years nest egg.
My comment just off the top of my head today was, he's going to lose everything. He's going to lose the career, his freedom, his money. That's everything's on the table right now.
He also didn't play 3 years, so he doesn't get a pension either from the NFL. He gets nothing.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that.
Got to play at least 3 years to get that.
Sad stuff.
It is.
All right. Well, we'll make it happier next time. His name's Drew Davenport. Our new official legal expert of the Autumn Windbag. So next time Soto gets caught at a rub and tug and we need to call somebody, he's going to call you, Drew. So just be ready.
I was using the bathroom. I was using the restroom. Ask for directions.
Oh, goodness. Just don't say anything.
Yeah, just shut up. That's your first free piece of legal advice from Drew.
It is. Right. Just be quiet. You know how many times I get a case and I look at the police report and I get 90% of the way through and I think, man, I'm going to beat this case at trial. And then the last 10% is my client admitting everything. So just be quiet.
Sounds like Ruggs at least did kind of the right thing, refused the test, and didn't sound like he said anything.
He did.
He said something, but it wasn't. It
wasn't. I'm guilty.
He was pissed from what I hear.
Yeah, and I don't understand that stance. That's a little bit odd to me. I'd like to hear more about that, because again, that's what we're talking about when we talk about mental health stuff. Maybe there's something going on, and maybe there's something that he's not addressing. And I get a lot of cases where people, they don't remember what happened during an incident, or they do something that's completely out of character because they're having a mental health issue or a break that isn't being treated. And so, I don't understand being argumentative at a scene where you rammed into somebody at 100 miles an hour. So there's got to be more to that. So I'm waiting on that. But bottom line is he did the right thing by refusing the breathalyzer. But a lot of people were coming at me on Twitter. They're going to do a blood draw. They're going to do and I said, yeah, I get it. You can get a warrant and get a blood draw. And in some jurisdictions, it doesn't even require a warrant. They can just do it. So he did the right thing, but so did the police, and they got their evidence if they did it right.
All right, give the man a follow on Twitter at Drew FBG Auctions. Drew Davenport, our new legal expert on the Autumn Windbags. Whether he likes it or not. Thanks for coming on, Drew.
Heck yeah! Thanks for having me, guys.
Got it. Sweet. appreciate you taking a little time away with the wife away. That's very nice. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, man. That's
awesome. Under 20 minutes. I appreciate it, guys.
You got it. Real quick, do you follow MMA or UFC at all?
A little bit, but yeah, not super.
Okay, because I have an MMA show on Sirius XM, and so I was wondering if if we ever need a legal expert, do you follow the sport?
But John Jones.
I would have to brush up.
John Jones is all you need to know. Just follow that guy.
The UFC would keep you very busy.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, I could absolutely be persuaded to help you out there for sure.
Cool. What state do you practice in?
I practice in Ohio. I'm only licensed in Ohio, but I do spend a lot of time looking at different states because of the nature of the job now is learning every state's laws when they get charged. That's not easy, but yeah.
Sweet. All right, go have fun with the wife, Drew. Appreciate you coming on. It was awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Bye, bud.
Hey, Windbags, if you want Darren Waller to catch 20 touchdown passes this season, don't be afraid to click those subscribe, like, share, and comment buttons. Plus, your comment could be featured in the next What Up, Windbags?